Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Today we're going to be learning about flowchart. So, what is a flowchart? A flowchart is a type of a diagram that represents an algorithm or a process. It's actually a visual representation of a system or a process. Visual meaning uh, you will see diagrams, you will see images, or sometimes you will see symbols as well. So, let me show you an example of a flowchart. Here, here's two examples. The first one is an example of a flowchart wherein you uh, put two inputs, and those two inputs will be added, and then it will be printed. The sum of those two inputs will be printed out. That's how simple this particular flowchart is. The other one uh, takes in two inputs and then analyzes those two inputs, and depending on the inputs, it will show you which one is the bigger number and the smaller number. So as you can see here, um, these particular flowcharts are represented with different symbols, and they are also you can also follow along the flowchart by using the arrows from start to end. Okay, so why do we need to use a flowchart? What are the benefits? The first and foremost benefit is better communication. Now, you don't need to actually explain all those things because if you can just show a flowchart, it would be a much easier thing to understand. And because of that, analysis of a particular process or a program will be much better. And this is also a way for one to document a process or a flow. And because we have flowcharts, it's easier for programmers to code also, and as it is also easier for them to debug as well as to maintain a particular program. Okay, so there are four different types of flowcharts. The first one is document flowchart. The second is system flowchart. The third is data flowchart. And the last one is program flowchart. We're actually going to be dealing with the last one, which is the program flowchart for this particular chapter. And as I've said, because flowcharts is a visual representation of data or system, uh, you have to use symbols, standard symbols to represent the steps that you're going to be showing people. So these are the different symbols that are available to you so that you can use them for your flowchart. As you can see here, we have process, predefined, process, alternate process, delay, preparation, manual operation, flow line, the terminator, decision, the connector, off-page connector, merge, extract, or summing junction, data, document, multi-document display, manual input, card, punch tape, and many more. But there are only a few of these symbols which we will be using commonly. We will be using most commonly the process symbol, the flow line, the terminator, the decision box or the decision symbol, the connector, the summing junction, and the data symbol. Okay. Now, in order for us to properly draw or create a flowchart, we need to follow some seven guidelines. The first guideline is whenever you're creating a flowchart, you must draw properly and clearly. We don't want to confuse people. That's why we have a flowchart. So when we draw a flowchart, we need to draw uh, properly and clearly. We need to use standard symbols so that people won't get confused and won't uh, misunderstand what you're trying to tell them through the flowchart that you have. Next, direction. We need to use directions that start from the top to the bottom and directions from the left to right. Whenever you're using a flow line, it should be starting from the top to the bottom and then left to right. Sometimes we could also use directions from right to left, but as much as possible, if we can avoid it, let us use from left to right directions. The third guideline is whenever we're using a process symbol, there's only one flow line going out. We can't have two flow lines going out, only one flow line going out. The next, using the decision symbol, there's only one flow line flowing in or coming in, and there can be 2 or 3 flow lines or lines going out. And then the last one is that for the terminator, there's only one flow line going in or going out of the terminator.
พี่ตอบให้ตรงอันนี้นะ
The next the next guideline is whenever we draw our flowchart, we need to start or to have one start or to have one finish. You can't have 2 starts or 2 finishes, okay? The fifth guideline is if the flowchart is too complex or too long, we have to use connectors, and this is how we use a connector. If, for example, our flowchart is too big or too long and we have to use 2 pages, then we use something that looks like this. This is somewhere here before letter A, before the connector that has the label A. We have some symbols there, for example, and then because we want to continue to the next page, we will write a connector that looks like this, and then on the next page we will start with the connector going and proceeding to whatever it is that we want to draw. Okay. The sixth guideline is that we have to use annotations. Whenever we're creating a flowchart that we want people to immediately get without us explaining it, or if there are some things that we need to tell the users of the flowchart, let us use an annotation. Okay, and this is how we use it. We just use something similar to a fork, and inside it we will write our information or a comment. This is actually useful whenever we have some examples or some computations. And then the last one is we need to test our flowchart and we need to debug if there is a mistake. Okay. So let me show you an example of some flowcharts. Okay, so here's an example of a flowchart which has an annotation over here on the right side. It has one start, one end, and the flow line is going down from top to bottom. So this flowchart actually just prints out the words "Hello World" onto the screen. So you start, and then you have the data symbol, print, and then after the word print, you have a quotation mark, which tells you that whatever is inside the quotation mark is a text, and then that text will be printed out. And then after that, the program ends. Another example here. Again, there's one start and one end. The flowchart is going from top to bottom. So after the symbol start, we have here a data symbol. This data symbol has the word read in it. And then after the word read, we have a variable. Now this variable can be whatever, you can write it however you want. You can have like nick over there, or you can have name over there. But you can also have like X or A or B or C. Okay, the variable can be named however you want it. It's just that whenever you're creating a variable or naming a variable, it has to be logical. If it's not logical, people might get confused about it. This goes back to our guideline. You have to use standard symbols. You have to not let people get confused with your flowchart. So whenever you're using it, whenever you've created a variable, you have to name it accordingly or logically so that people will understand it without you explaining to them. So again, we have here the word read. Whenever we have the word read, it will ask for user input. And whatever the user types in will go inside the variable that we have here. In this case, we have user nickname. And then on the next step or the next symbol, we have here the same symbol, data symbol, but instead of read, we have print. Now, because we have print, we will be displaying something onto the screen. In this case, we will be displaying whatever is inside user nickname variable. So if, for example, the user types in hi or hello, okay, whatever is inside user nickname, which is hi or hello, will be printed out. Okay, let's go back. So if the user would type in on this particular step, the user types in the word Obama, it will be printed out too. What will be printed out will be Obama. If the user types in paper, what will be printed out will be paper. Going to another example here. This is something similar to the previous example, but in this case, instead of printing out whatever is inside username, we added the word hello before it. So, for example, if the user types in microphone, what will be printed out will be hello, comma, space, microphone. Because microphone, why microphone? Because that's what the user types in or keys in to the program. And the last example is a flowchart, a very simple flowchart wherein it adds two numbers. Okay, so at the start of the program, we have here a process symbol. This process initiates the three variables that we have here. And these three variables are initialized with or having the value zeros in them. So sum has 0 in it, num1 has 0 in it, and num2 has 0 in it. In the next symbol, we have read, num1 and num2. Again, because we have the word read, whatever the user types in will go inside num1, and the second thing that the user will type in will go inside num2. Okay, so say for example the user types in 2 and 5. So num1 has the value of 2 and num2 has the value of 5. Okay, so since num1 has the value of 2 and num2 has the value of 5, if we add them, they will be equal to 7. And now 7 will go inside sum. The arrow left here tells you that whatever the result of this equation here or expression here will be going inside the variable sum. So sum now has the value of 7. And in the next symbol, we have print sum. Since sum has the value of 7, it will actually print 7. So print 7 is the result if you add num1, which has the value of 2, and num2, which has the value of 5. So what will be printed out into the screen will be 7 is the result if you add 2 and 5, period. And then that's how this particular program or this particular flowchart works. Okay, so some tips that you need to be aware of when you're using the word read in your data symbol, it has to be followed by a variable name. Again, the variable name has to be logical so that people will understand it easily. If we write X, people will not right away get what X is. But if we write there something like total of expenses, then people will get that particular variable is going to be the total of expenses, something like that. And then if you have multiple inputs, like for example this one, I have two inputs here, you need to separate it by a comma. Okay, so things to that you need to know when you're creating variables. Variable names should have no spaces in them. If you have to use space, please use underscore instead so that it will not create confusion. And then next one is it must not begin with a number or a special character. So if your variable has if your variable begins with a number or a dollar sign, it should not be. Okay, the next one is when you're using two or more variables, first letter should be small, and the first letter of every word should be small, and the succeeding letters should be uh, should be capital letter. So say for example, this one is actually two words, but since I don't want to use an underscore, I wrote it as one word. The first letter of the whole word will be a small letter, and the first letter of the second word will be big. And this one has actually three words, but the first letter of the first word will be small, and the first letter of the second word is big, as well as the first letter of the third word. And you are not allowed to put full stops or periods, and it should not be too long. It also should be logical. Again, we don't want anything that should confuse people. Okay. Another thing to note is that you have to use the left arrow. So the left arrow is used whenever we're assigning something to a variable, whenever we're initializing, whenever we're storing a value. So say for example, this is your variable, and you want to put inside it the word hello. So you have to use the arrow sign. Now the arrow sign can also be you can think of the arrow sign, the left arrow sign, as an equal sign. Okay, but we're using here an arrow sign instead of the equal sign so that we uh, can immediately recognize that it's actually inside, uh, putting a value inside a variable. Okay, only a left arrow, not right arrows. Okay, so here's another example. Num1 inside it will be 5. So you're actually going to read it like this. Okay. Area rect gets length times width. Okay. The variable first input gets hello. num1 gets 5. Okay, instead of saying num1 equals 5, but num1 gets 5 because 5 is going to go inside num1. Next is, if you're going to use print, it should be followed by words or variables. Let me show you again an example of that. Sorry. Okay, here it is, an example of that. So I wrote here print. This particular part here is going to be the text or the words, and then this particular part here is going to be your variable. Okay, as you may have noticed, if it's a text, it is enclosed in quotation marks, and if it's not a text, there's no quotation marks. That means it's a variable. Okay, and in between the text and the variable is the ampersand symbol, or the sometimes you call it as the and symbol. This particular and symbol or ampersand symbol actually is used to concatenate or to connect the text and the variable. Another example is you can find here print sum, which is the variable, and which concatenates or which um, connects the variable and the text is the result if you add, and then another variable here which is connected by the and then connected by the another text or set of text, and then connected by another variable. Okay, so again, if it's a text, you must enclose it with a quotation marks, and if you want to connect text and variables, you must use the symbol and. Okay, so use flow lines pointing down or pointing from right to left. Avoid uh, flow lines pointing upwards as much as possible, but you still can do that. Okay, sometimes when you need to perform basic arithmetic operations, you will have to use these particular symbols to do that. Okay, instead of writing x for multiplying, we use the star symbol or the asterisk. And instead of using the division symbol like we do in math, we use the forward slash. Okay. Um, our next topic will be all about how to create these particular flowcharts that we have here.